executives are going to be asking themselves the same thing. If we already pay for AWS Audit Manager and capture every Cloudtrail event, why do audits still take 6 weeks? So watch what happens when we let our Fabric automation finish the last mile. So here's the ISO 42001 assessment for Meridian Financial. Audit Manager is tracking multiple controls. The evidence exists. Cloudtrail captures every event. Config snapshots every resource. But auditors need it organized by clause, and that takes consultants hundreds of hours. So we're going to click into the AWS Audit Manager exports for this case study example, which is Meridian Finance. And you can see here we've got a number of different outputs. So first I'll click into the AWS logs. And here you can see the simple JSON output. So as you can see, raw logs are comprehensive but kind of disorganized, and there's no compliance clause mapping. Also, there's no automated remediation planning. It's just raw logs. So we're now going to move over to Lambda. Now, because Fabric runs inside AWS, I'm not downloading anything. This Lambda payload tells our orchestrator to execute the Audit Evidence Packager pattern, and behind the scenes it spins up a Fargate task, processes the evidence, and writes the output back to our results bucket. So over on Lambda, we're going to click into AIG Pattern Orchestrator Production. We're going to go into the Test tab. We're going to create a new event, and we'll just call this Audit Evidence Demo. And we'll clear this JSON here and replace it with this. Just going to save that now, and then we'll run test. Every run leaves an immutable trail. CloudWatch logs capture the orchestrator event, ECS task ARN, duration and pattern summary. DynamoDB tracks status so auditors can confirm when evidence was packaged. So we're now going to go to the Monitor tab, and we're going to click the View CloudWatch logs. And we'll click into the latest log stream. So you can see all the timestamps here. And we have all the execution details. So now we're going to move over to DynamoDB. Click into tables, and we're going to click into this assessment state table. Let's explore the table items. And you can see here the tracked execution. Inside the AIG assessment state, if we click into Meridian Financial, and we can see that everything is logged within here. We can see client ID, assessment timestamp. And if we go into the JSON, we can see even more detail. We've got the ARNs recorded throughout, which patterns were launched. Everything is recorded. So DynamoDB tracks every execution so auditors can confirm when evidence was packaged. 2 minutes later, the results bucket contains auditor-ready deliverables. The pattern generated an executive summary with compliance score, evidence mapped by ISO clause, and a complete remediation roadmap. I'm now going to move over to the S3 bucket. So we're here inside the S3 console. Okay, so inside the S3 bucket, we're going to click inside AIG results, assessments, and here's our demo business, Meridian Finance, audit evidence, click into the folder, and then we'll take a look at the executive summary. So if we just open this up, we can see this is the Audit Evidence Packager for Meridian Financial Services, and they've had our ISO 42001 assessment. We've got the date, timeline, and their overall compliance score, 73%. 31 controls are complete, 9 partial, and there's 2 gaps. So they've got incomplete audit records, missing training documentation, and no incident response log. They've got a full remediation plan over weeks, but again, obviously, based on the urgency, the resources available, this can be tweaked. But you can see it's a good place to start. References specific clauses within ISO 42001, and it links to other controls within the series. Also cites EU AI Act Articles 11 and 12, and then some ROI impact. Cost avoided, 45,000 in potential consultant hours, time saved 6 weeks, down to 10 minutes. Confidence score being 99% audit ready. And then you can see here how this was generated by Audit Evidence Packager, Pattern Evidence Sources, Cloudtrail config, Audit Manager, etc. So if we now come back to and open the remediation plan, so we can see here the remediation plan for Meridian Financial Services. The assessment is the ISO 42001 certification, and it gives them the date and the timeline to full or meet the requirements for full compliance. So we can see the executive overview that there's 3 critical gaps and 9 partial controls identified, and the remediation plan prioritizes by risk and organizational impact. So the first 3 action items, this is immediate weeks 1 and 2 audit record compilation, and it cites the particular article from ISO standard, incomplete audit records, who's the owner, so who's responsible for this. This would be the compliance team. There's a rough deadline in there, and then the steps that you'd need to take: extract Cloudtrail logs from S3, validate config snapshots and cross-reference with assessment export, and then create an audit trail document. And it gives them a success criteria of all 156 evidence items are catalogued, and the potential risk if this is not done: audit failure plus 50k in consulting costs. Action 2, training documentation matrix, again ISO standard with the particular clause, missing training records, who's responsible, the HR department, a rough deadline, and then some actionable steps: list all personnel, document training dates, certification tracking and compliance verification. And then the success criteria there: 100% team training is documented. Action 3, risk assessment review. Again, we cite the specific clauses from ISO, and the gap is that they've got an outdated risk matrix. The owner is the risk committee or whichever department's responsible for that, depending on how your business is set up. A rough deadline. Again, the risk committee is initially responsible, but that depends on context. And then the deliverable will be an updated risk register. And then finally, if we click into this particular document here, and this is the 9.2 internal audit requirements. We just open this to have a read what it's saying. So again, In this example, they were assessed against clause 9.2 of ISO 42001, and it was an internal audit. The status is partial compliance, and you even have the control description. The organisation must establish and maintain procedures for internal audits to assess conformance with ISO 42001 requirements and the effectiveness of the AI management system. And we have a list of things here: objective evidence, evidence items found, Cloudtrail audit log, and it's got the date and the time. API call is even logged here. The user, the resource, and the status. You've got a configuration snapshot. You've got the IAM roles, audit manager execution role, compliance, attached management policies verified. Assessment export metadata, controls evaluated 42, evidence items 156, and then the date and time this was last run. Gaps identified, documented, audit procedures are not found in their S3 bucket. Audit frequency is not clearly defined in the policy, and remediation tracking is incomplete. And again, as we just previously shown, you've got the remediation steps in this final report. Priority is high, target completion date. Owner, the compliance lead, upload formal audit procedures documents, document audit schedule and frequency, create audit finding remediation log, and link all evidence to specific controls. And then they can also cross-reference this to the related clause, which is 8.3, monitoring and evaluation. The EU AI Act Article 11, which also refers to monitoring and notification. And the linked controls are 9.1 to 9.3. And it tells you when it was generated and when the next review is due. So let's quantify the impact. Traditional pre-audit consulting averages 30k to 80k and can take around 6 to 8 weeks. Here, this sort of, this hybrid audit manager, which I've created, keeps collecting evidence and then Fabric packages it in under 10 minutes every quarter with 0 consultant hours. So with traditional consultancy, again, this could cost between 30 to 80k. The timeline for traditional consultancy work would be 6 to 8 weeks. Our timeline is 10 minutes. And the frequency of traditional consultancy would be one-off per year, or however much money you've got to throw at them. With our system, AIGE and AWS, the frequency could be quarterly and it's automated, or again, that can be adapted depending on your business needs. Traditional with consultant hours, you're looking in the hundreds, and again, that just comes with a hefty price tag. With our AIG and AWS system, there's a setup time, of course, around 2 hours, but then after that, it's already fully integrated into your Amazon system and therefore easily accessible, fully optimizable, and it's automated. So that's about a 92% cost reduction and continuous readiness. So if you're already on AWS with Cloudtrail and Config, this is an add-on that just multiplies the value of tools that you've already bought. So here's what we just saw. Organizations like Meridian Financial, they're already paying for AWS infrastructure. They have Cloudtrail capturing every API call. They have Config recording every resource. They have Audit Manager orchestrating compliance assessments. And these are best-in-class tools. But here's the reality. Those tools are collectors. They're brilliant at gathering evidence, but they stop there. What happens next is still manual. An auditor looks at 150 pieces of raw evidence scattered across S3 and Cloudtrail logs. An organization's compliance team spends 6 to 8 weeks mapping these logs to regulatory clauses. And they hire expensive consultants, again, anything from 30 to 80,000 per engagement, just to translate technical evidence into auditor language. And then the audit ends and they start over next year. What we built is different. This pattern, the Audit Evidence Packager, it's the bridge between what AWS collects and what auditors need. It takes your raw evidence and transforms it into ISO 42001 documentation, into EU AI Act compliance artifacts, into a remediation roadmap with owners and timelines, all automatically, all inside your AWS account in under 10 minutes, not 6 weeks, 10 minutes. And it's repeatable. Run it quarterly, run it on demand when your auditors call. You're always compliance ready. So why is this valuable? Because it's not just about cost savings, though 92% cost reduction and 45,000 per audit cycle matters. It's about removing the bottleneck. Compliance shouldn't require consultant gatekeeping. Your security team shouldn't be blocked on compliance documentation. And it's about accuracy. AI-powered mapping to compliance clauses means no miscontrols, no auditor findings because we didn't document it the right way. And for customers, this multiplies the value of tools you've already bought. AWS infrastructure isn't your problem. Turning that infrastructure into audit-ready documentation is, and we solve that, or at least try to. For employers and investors, this represents a new category. Compliance automation isn't new, but automating the translation between technical evidence and regulatory requirements, that's the gap nobody's filled. And as regulatory complexity grows, ISO 42001, AI Act, SOC 2, HIPAA variants, this pattern scales across every framework. This is the future of compliance operations, not hiring consultants to interpret evidence, automating the interpretation, letting your team focus on actually fixing gaps instead of proving compliance. That's what we built, and that's why it matters. We're solving the compliance automation problem that consulting firms have ignored because they profit from the inefficiency. That's a 40 billion compliance service market waiting for this.